This is the Louie T Network.
Draft Zone. Draft Zone.
Welcome, you are in the lab
Draft
room. I'm your host,
Zone.
Lou. Thank you for joining me here on this program, 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. Who's Next format in full effect, which means the viewers, you, get to pick who is next up on this series simply by being the first to leave a comment in the bottom of this video's comment section and future videos stating two things: the phrase next and the team you would like to see next. And so after that is done, we will break each and every single player down in their draft. And how do we do that? Simple. We use our baseball grading scale: single, double, triple, home run. There are no strikeouts here in the draft wrap-up series. Apply bonuses when necessary. Tally up every single score from each player, get an aggregate score for that team's draft, give them a grade, and then move on to the next team that you, the viewer, have selected up next on this program. So, sounds simple enough? That's because it is. Be first, leave the comment, next, team you want to see next, and then we'll move on from there. So, I've got the Super Bowl defending champion Seattle Seahawks up on the docket, and we know they've made a living drafting well in the NFL draft and building a competitive football team into a powerhouse via the draft. They've hit it big over the last 4 or 5 years. They've been consistent, and that is why they're hoisting the Lombardi Trophy. And if they continue to draft the way they have, they will be a powerhouse for many more years to come. So let's take a look at the 2014 NFL Draft of the Seattle Seahawks and see if they were able to bring in another great haul to add to this already loaded roster. I've got my handy dandy pointer. I've got the big board behind me. That's all I need to get this party started. So, in other words, let's get this party started. So, Seattle Seahawks, 9-player draft for the Seahawks. And look, they were one of 3 teams to not have a first-round pick. Now, they didn't go into the draft not having a first-round pick, but that's what ended up happening. They ended up trading out of the first round. The Redskins and the Indianapolis Colts were the only other 2 teams to not make a first-round selection in 2014. And I thought this would be the case with the Seahawks. I thought that because they were penny pinching, because all of the money that they've had to shell out this offseason and will have to shell out in future offseasons, they just re-signed Doug Baldwin. We know about Earl Thomas's contract that he landed and Richard Sherman's deal. And so they've had to pay a lot of money. We know about Percy Harvin's deal. We know about Cam Chancellor's deal. So, and you know, Russell Wilson is looming around the corner. So I didn't think they wanted to have to sign a first-round pick if they didn't have to. But Seattle had their eye on one particular player. He wasn't there at 32. There was no need to make a selection. They get out of the first round. Smart on the part of the Seattle Seahawks. Now, yeah, you lose that 5th-year option. However, you don't have to pay first-round money for a pick, and that's ultimately what I thought Seattle was going to do. If that pick wasn't there, if that guy that they coveted wasn't there at 32, they were going to try to get out of that pick. And luckily enough, Teddy Bridgewater was still there, so it was a very, very hot pick one that someone was going to come up and take off their hands, and so it happened. So no first rounder for Seattle. However, we start in the second round, 45th overall selection, wide receiver out of Colorado, Paul Richardson. P-Rich, as everybody likes to call him. And there's one facet to P-Rich's game, and that is it. And that is speed, pure, unadulterated speed. And the kind that blows you away, the kind that floors you when you see it. And this guy is the quintessential take the top off of the defense type of wide receiver. And watching tape on him, there is no doubt about it. There's speed present, and you can't miss it. You can't teach it. You either got it or you don't. And this guy has plenty of it. And I tell you what, you know how some guys, they go out and they run a 4.40, which is what he ran flat, a 4.40 flat. So the guy is a blazer. Some guys can run that in a combine setting when they're running, and it seems like they're running because of a track background, and they are able to run in a straight line really fast on a track and field surface, but you put them on the field and that speed doesn't translate. That's not P-Rich, man. That is not P-Rich. Just to give you a little background on this guy, he's a 6-footer, and his comp in the league right now, everyone wants to call him a poor man's Deshaun Jackson. I'll sign up for that. He's a little bit taller than Deshaun Jackson is. I think that Deshaun Jackson's hands are much better than Paul Richardson, and we'll get to that in a second. However, I can see where the comparisons lie. Really small frame, slender guy, can move really fast, eats up. Deshaun Jackson, I think a lot of people don't understand why he's fast. He takes really long and huge strides, and it eats up a lot of grass within, a certain amount of steps. I mean, Deshaun Jackson, even though he's a smaller guy with a smaller presence, smaller frame, his steps are humongous, and he'll eat up cushions very, very quickly. Same thing with Paul Richardson. He has huge strides. They eat up space and eat up cushions vastly. And so I see the comparisons, his movements. He's a very agile guy, especially coming off the line. Some of his best tape last year was against Oregon. And for those of you who follow college football, the best corner going into next year's season is Oregon corner. And he is the consensus #1 corner on a lot of people's Heisman watch lists, on a lot of different award lists for the beginning of the season. And that's Ifu Egpro Olomu. And he's the best corner in college football right now. He's the guy everybody's going to have their eye on. And Paul Richardson ran laps around that guy last year. Absolutely ran circles around Ifu Egpre Olomu. So I'm telling you right now, he's got the speed to make him an elite receiver in this league. Now, to me, he's a one-trick pony. Much like Mike Wallace in this league, he doesn't do much else. We saw Mike Wallace last year kind of bomb initially in Miami. I don't think that's the end-all, be-all of Mike Wallace in Miami. I think he can rebound, but I think he had a tough year. And Paul Richardson, for me, is that type of receiver where I don't really see much value elsewhere with him. And I'm not saying he can't run different routes, because I believe he can. I just don't know with his frame and how he can be redirected, because let's talk about him for a second. 6-foot receiver, about $175, so he's a small guy, can be easily redirected off the line of scrimmage. If you jam this guy at the line of scrimmage, he's easily knocked off of his route and will mess up the timing of a play. If he's given a free release, the guy is dangerous. He's explosive. So I think that's something that he'll have to adjust to. He'll have to put on more weight. He'll have to get stronger. I do not know if that's going to alter the amount of speed that he possesses or not, but I think it is imperative that he get somewhat stronger. I'm not saying that he has to go and bulk up and put on 15 pounds, but I am saying he needs to put on 7 or 8 or maybe even 10 pounds of muscle so that he can withstand some of these more physical corners at this level. Because again, in college football, guys are terrified of speed. Guys are absolutely terrified, mortified of speed in college football. And so they back off 10, 12 yards And for a guy like P. Rich, that's nothing. He'll eat that cushion up in 7 steps. So he loves it. He's licking his chops when he sees the guy 10 yards off, because that's a license for him to absolutely burn you with the 9 route. So if he tries to do that at this level, what guys are going to do is simply get their hands on him and do their work early at the line of scrimmage and make it tough for him to get by them. By that time, the quarterback's off of that first read onto another guy, because in this league, you don't have 5 seconds to get rid of the football. You've got 3, and you don't have time to stick around with the guy that's having trouble getting off the line of scrimmage. So I'd like to see Paul Richardson put on a little bit of muscle. And like I said, he didn't have to bulk up and swell up into a 190, 95-pound receiver. I'm not asking him to do that. If he can get to a $183, if he can get to a $185, that's fine by me. And so I'd like to see him do that. But I tell you what, the Seahawks lacked that explosive target last year. When Percival is injured, and as we saw last year, that is very often, you're hoping that that's not the case this year, because when he's on the field, he's a dynamic presence that's a game changer from the receiver position, as a guy handing the football off to in the backfield, and in the returns game. We saw that in the Super Bowl. So we know Percival is a game breaker and can take it to the house anytime he touches the football. But how often are you going to get this man to suit up and play for you in 2014 and moving forward? You do not know the answer to that. But between the concussions and the headaches, the migraines that he gets, and the nicks and bruises that keeps Percy Harvin out of the lineup, you can't count on this man for a full 16-game slate. You need speed. And last year, you lacked it. You lacked top-end speed when he wasn't in the lineup. Now, Golden Tate could run, but again, Golden Tate's speed doesn't scare anyone. So Paul Richardson is going to bring that element to your football team right away. He's going to give you a guy that is going to scare defenses and not allow them to come up and keep everything in front of you in Seattle. When they're playing against the Seahawks, you're going to have to respect what Paul Richardson brings to the table, and that is pure speed. And so there is great value in this pick for the Seahawks, because it gives them something that they were missing and lacking a season ago without Percival in the lineup. So this is a great pick for me. I think this is something that the Seahawks needed. I think this is a guy that they targeted all along, and they were hoping that they could get their hands on him. And by trading back out of the first round, I think that really made this come to fruition. In the second round, 45th overall selection, wide receiver out of Colorado, Paul Richardson for me is a triple. This is a really good pickup for the Seattle Seahawks. He's going to fill a need for them, a void on this team. Again, there are no elite receivers on this team. And look, I say that in a kind way. You've got a lot of really good receivers. None of them great. None of them going to be Pro Bowlers per se, other than Percival Harvin, of course. But again, he needs to play to achieve the numbers and the production to get him to that type of status. But Paul Richardson has the ability to change the game, and he doesn't have to touch the ball 84 times in a given season to have a huge impact. He can be one of these guys, much like the guys you already have on your roster, that gets 63 catches, that catches 56 balls. He'll have 846 yards receiving and 7 touchdowns, and 4 of those will be over 40 yards. And this guy will have a huge impact on your roster right away. And so this is a huge pickup for the Seattle Seahawks. This is a physical division. He's going to have to get stronger, however, because the corners in your division are going to come and test him at the line of scrimmage, and he's got to be willing and able to get off a jam and press coverage and beat corners deep for coming up and trying him at the line of scrimmage. You look at the second round pick that the Seattle Seahawks had, 64th overall, offensive tackle out of Missouri, Justin Britt. And he was by far the best offensive lineman that the Missouri Tigers had in a historic season for them, almost winning the SEC title, losing in the championship game to Auburn. And so they had a really good season, and Justin Britt was a huge part of that season that they had, and a huge reason why that they had such a successful season out in Missouri. And I tell you what, when I turned on the tape, I was expecting, because look, let's face it, the Seattle Seahawks have gained a reputation of having the ability to just draft well. So it's almost like Ozzie Newsome in Baltimore. Everything that he touches turns to gold. I expect players that the Seahawks draft to just be good, especially ones that they pick early. You just give them the benefit of the doubt. Even if you don't agree with the pick, you say, hey, they must see something. This guy must be a Seattle Seahawk. He must fit into their system because Schneider and Carroll wouldn't have pulled the trigger on him. So you just say, hey, he's got to be the right guy, right? And so I look at Justin Britt, and Mike Mayock tells me, and you know how I trust in Mike Mayock around this time of year. And if Mike Mayock says, hey, I had a 5th round grade on this guy, that makes me go, you had a what? So then now I'm a little like kind of taken back. And now I'm like, hey, I need to watch the tape on this guy and see why Mike Mayock would make a comment like that. So the first tape that I put on was Georgia. And I'm going to tell you straight up, not going to sugarcoat you. After the first 3 minutes of that tape, I said, what in the hell are the Seattle Seahawks doing? I looked at this guy, and I'm telling you straight up, the first 10 snaps, this guy was beaten 3 times, and 2 of them were for sacks. And I'm like, are the Seahawks serious? I'm like, it can't get much worse than this. But after those first 10 snaps, it was eerily quiet over there. I mean, it was crickets over there on that left side of the offensive line. And so he cleaned it up. He struggled early. And what I noticed was that speed to the inside gives this guy fits. Speed to the inside. And it seems like he should be beaten more. If you're looking for me to make you feel good about this pick, I'm sorry, I can't do it. Now, I will say this. The guy competes. And he wins more often than it seems like he's supposed to. And what I mean by that is, every tape that I watched, guys were beating him initially. But he does a great job of recovering and pushing those guys around the quarterback and allowing the quarterback to have a lane to step up into. And this is why he gets beat to the outside, because he's susceptible to the speed rush to the outside. However, he recovers so well, and his feet are just good enough to recover and push guys around the quarterback to allow them to step up, that when he's beaten to the outside and he opens his hips, if you give him a hard outside and he opens the hips up and you go back inside, he can't recover. So he's susceptible to speed rushes inside. Outside, however, where it seems like he's beaten, I swear, if I watched 90 snaps of this guy, I swear 72 of them he was beaten to the outside. However, only 2 of those resulted in sacks. I mean, he doesn't get beat often just by pure speed. He recovers. And honestly, I don't know how he does it. I don't know how he does it, because I'm telling you right now, off the snap, he seems to be somewhat slow. It just seems like guys have an initial step on him. They get by him, and then he recovers. It's almost like he wakes up, he recovers, and he's able to push that defensive end around the quarterback and allow him to step up. And so that's the thing that impressed me the most, was his recovery. But you don't have to recover unless you're beaten. And to me, he's beaten too often. And at this level, I don't think he'll be able to get away with that necessarily, because the thing I think those guys in college were missing and lacking was the ability to explode around the edge. And the second component about beating a guy is the hand movement and the ability to bend the corner. These guys weren't bending the corner, because once you beat a guy and now he's looking to push you, if you duck and they go trying to push, guess what? They're pushing air. You're underneath them. Next thing you know, you're closing in on the quarterback. Those guys don't know anything about that in college. They don't know how to finish beating a tackle. And at this level, guys will beat you like a drum. And so I think Justin Britt could struggle. Now, granted, he was at left tackle. I don't think he's a left tackle in this league. I can assure you that he's not a left tackle. I think he's more of a right tackle. Maybe you have ideas of grandeur of kicking this guy inside. I don't know what you have in store for Justin Britt. He started at guard at college before, so it's not foreign to him. So he can play guard. He can play at tackle. I'm looking at this guy as a right tackle. Okay, so no more Bino Giacomini. I'm thinking there's an opening over there on the right side of the offensive line. Your offensive line was borderline horrendous last year anyhow, so you need to revamp this offensive line. This is a guy that can start, has the ability to play. I just want to see at what level. I have a hard time justifying him as a second-round pick, though. But again, I'm going to give Snyder and Carroll the benefit of the doubt because they don't get it wrong. They win at this thing we call the draft game. They win. So in the second round, 64th overall, offensive tackle out of Missouri, Justin Britt for me. He's a double. I'm not sold on the pick. I don't like where you guys selected him. I don't think he's a second-round offensive tackle. I don't know if you have ideas of moving this guy inside or not, but he's solid in the run game. He can get to the second level. I think he moves well enough. I don't have a problem with his movement skills. I think he's not a crosshair blocker, and that makes me a little upset because when he gets to the second level, he's one of these guys that runs out there, and a lot of times he didn't block anybody. You know, he's not a guy that seeks and destroys. He's not a crosshair blocker. He doesn't lock on to somebody, and once he gets them in his crosshairs, they're blocked. He's a guy that runs down the field, and he's looking around. He doesn't know who to block, who to go get, and those guys annoy me. The guys that get out on the screen, and they're just running, and they're in the way. Go block somebody, find somebody, and fall on them. And Justin Britt, he's a guy that he doesn't really necessarily jolt you. He doesn't move guys out of the way. I don't think he creates a lot of separation in the run game. He doesn't open up rushing lanes. He just gets in the way. And sometimes that's fine. Other times it's not. I just don't think he was a second rounder. But again, Snyder and Carroll picked him in the second round. They see something. Maybe he fits their system. We will see. Justin Britt, second round, 64th overall. To me, double out of Missouri. You look at the fourth round, 108th overall selection, defensive end out of UCLA, Cassius Marsh. This is a guy that I am perplexed about. Big question mark about Cassius Marsh, because to me, I don't know what he is. And he doesn't know either. And I think the Seahawks have an idea of what they want this guy to be. Okay? So I actually had to go back and watch another tape just to make sure that my eyes weren't deceiving me, because I don't make mistakes like this. Because to me, hey, me, he, hey, he, we, right here, me, I saw this guy as a defensive tackle. I said, I like this guy better as a D tackle. And in 2011, that's what he was playing. He was playing defensive tackle. And I thought the quickness that he showed off the ball, the ability to use a swim move and a rip move and get inside and beat guards and centers was uncanny. And I really liked that. And I said, that's what the Seahawks must see. Then you put on the 2012 and 13 tape where he was more so a defensive end / outside linebacker. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how I feel about this, but okay. So the thing that struck me as odd with this guy is that the first tape that I watched, he was like 290 pounds as a defensive tackle. That's the Cassius Marsh that I like. That's the Marsh I do like. And then I looked at the 2012 tape, and he was a defensive end at about 275. He was okay. And then in 2013, he would be standing up at outside linebacker at times. And I'm like, okay, what's happening here? Like, I'm confused. What is this guy doing? So one year he's 290. Another year he's 275. Another year he's about 250. I'm like, what is going on? So I don't really know what to make of this guy. Because when I went and I did my post-film watching homework, I saw that he was 6'4", 252, and I'm like, wait a minute. That's not what I just saw on film. No, this guy can't be 6'4", 252. So I had to go back and watch more tape just to make sure my eyes weren't deceiving me. And they weren't. They said that he dropped a lot of weight, and his playing weight was more around 260-something this season, and he was more 270, to be honest. and then he dropped some weight, ran better at the combine, ran a 4.84 40, which I didn't see that on tape. So obviously the weight that he shed helped him be a little bit faster for his drills at the combine. But look, he's not an outside linebacker. To me, he's not a tweener. If he's a tweener between defensive end and defensive tackle, not an outside linebacker and a defensive end. They had him as a 5 technique at UCLA. And honestly, I think UCLA got it right by putting him at 5 technique. I think that's what his body type says he's supposed to be more naturally. But I like my Cassius Marsh as a defensive tackle. Now, I think the Seahawks know that he can't play outside linebacker. And again, they don't play a 3-4 defense. They play a 4-3 defensive front. So I think where his value is as a defensive end. And I think they realize that. And I'm hearing that they want him at around 270, and they're going to roll with him at that weight as a defensive end. Fine by me. Fine by me. I don't have a problem with that. Here's Cassius Marsh in a nutshell. The guy is explosive when he's bigger because he's explosive for his size. You lose that weight, then you lose the explosion because you're not that explosive. You don't have a lot of quick twitch fibers. So he's not a guy that's going to wow you at 252 as a defensive end / outside linebacker. However, you put on the weight and you get to 275, or you put on the weight and you get to 290 as a defensive tackle, and all of a sudden this guy's explosive because he's bigger and you don't expect him to move that fast for his size. So to me, losing weight hurts him because his skill set says that he's supposed to be bigger, and his strength would then be the explosiveness off the football, the ability to beat guards and tackles and centers across their face with speed off the snap. And he's a powerful guy, so he can stand up to the point of attack in the run game. Again, if he loses weight, maybe he loses some of that girth and ability to anchor and set the edge. I don't know. That's why I think the Seahawks said, hey, you got to be 270, man. Minimum 270. So I think the Seahawks, they've got it right here. If you ask me, I think he could be an awesome defensive tackle in this league, but defensive end is just as good. So his problem is he's got some off-the-field issues. And on the field, the guy can be a nut job at times, okay? There is 15-yard penalties. He's ejected out of a game for a bench-clearing brawl. There's a YouTube video of this guy picking up a Utah quarterback. And you could see through his brain, running through his mind, he literally wanted to suplex this quarterback. He gets in scot-free. Quarterback lets go of the football. He says, hey, I ran this far. I've got you in my grasp. I might as well slam you to the turf. He picks him up, and then his brain, he has an attack of conscience, and his brain says, no, Cassius, put him down. And so he picks him up, he goes to slam him, and then he realizes, I'm about to pick up a foolish 15-yard penalty, aren't I? And he puts him down, and he looks at the official like, hey, don't throw the flag. I didn't slam him. I was going to, but don't throw the flag on me. And he's the type of guy that he runs all the way across the field from his right defensive end position all the way to the left sideline chasing the quarterback who scrambles out of the pocket. Quarterback realizes he doesn't have a target. He's about to run out of bounds. As his foot is hitting the ground, Cassius Marsh is going to hit him and pick up a 15-yard penalty. That's the type of player you have on your hands if you can get him to be more disciplined. And to me, he'll fit right in Seattle. He's one of these guys that's borderline crazy, which fits exactly what you do on defense, fits this division to a T. I think he's a great fit within your scheme. If you can find a way to make this guy comfortable, whether it's a defensive tackle, defensive end, or some kind of hybrid, whatever you do with him, you'll figure it out. I think 270, 275 pounds at defensive end is perfect for this guy. He'll be stout at the point of attack in the run game. He'll get occasional pressure on the quarterback. Don't look for him to be a high sack guy. Don't think his numbers will really make you feel warm and fuzzy. However, he will be stout at the point of attack in the run game, and he'll occasionally get pressure on the quarterback. And so this is a solid pick in the 4th round, 108th overall selection, defensive end out of UCLA. Cassius Marsh is a double. I wanted to give him a triple, but I need to see him figure out what he is, pick a weight, and stay at that weight. Who do you know fluctuates from a 290-pound defensive tackle to a 252-pound outside linebacker? Who fluctuates 40 pounds? Nobody does that. Pick a weight, stay there, and become dominant at that position. Please, we'll see if he's able to do that. Move on to the second fourth-round selection for this Seattle Seahawks football team. 123rd pick overall, wide receiver out of Alabama, Kevin Norwood. Really solid wide receiver. That's the best way to describe him. An extremely proficient, workman-like receiver. He did all the dirty work at Alabama, made all the tough grabs, didn't say anything, ultimate team player, very humble individual. There's a lot to like here about Kevin Norwood. He fits in with what Seattle is. And I think, honestly speaking, he's going to take the place of Golden Tate. Now, he can't give you the special teams value that Golden Tate gave you. He can't give you the sheer physicality that Golden Tate gave you, even though he's not a softie by any stretch of the imagination. He's a tough cookie as well, but Golden Tate played the wide receiver position like a running back. That's not what Kevin Norwood is going to do. However, Kevin Norwood is a tough individual. He'll make all the catches on third down. He'll move the sticks. He'll make some outstanding grabs. He'll do whatever it takes to help the team win. These are the type of guys you bend over backwards for. And so Kevin Norwood is going to fit in perfectly. And to me, he's the perfect Seattle Seahawks receiver because the Seahawks have a bunch of guys that just get it done. None of them stands out from the rest. They all get it done collectively as a group. And that's the type of receiver Kevin Norwood is. He's not the type of guy that's going to make you take a second look. You're not really going to say, all right, we have to make sure we know where Kevin Norwood is at all times. He's not one of those players. But neither is Doug Baldwin, neither is Sidney Rice, neither is any of those guys outside of Percival Harvin on your roster at the receiver position. And so he's just another guy. However, he'll get it done when you call his number. When Russell Wilson scrambles out of the pocket and is looking down the field and he sees Kevin Norwood flash in front of his face and he throws the football up, Kevin Norwood is going to go and get it. If it's 3rd and 7, he'll run an 8-yard route and come down with the football in double coverage in traffic and pick up a first down. And that's Kevin Norwood. He'll block in the run game. He'll do all the dirty work. This guy is a receiver that's going to fit in perfectly with this football team in the 4th round. 123rd overall selection, wide receiver out of Alabama, Kevin Norwood, for me, is a solid double. This guy is a perfect fit in Seattle at the wide receiver position. So we move on to the 3rd and final 4th round selection for these Seahawks. 132nd overall, linebacker out of Boston College, Kevin Pierre Louie. Now, that's my second favorite name in this draft, behind Laurent Duvernay-Tardif out of Kansas City. However, I don't think he pronounces his name Kevin Pierre Louie. I'm going to call him that, but I think it's Kevin Pierre Lewis. Either way, I like the name. They call him KPL for short, so go ahead and get used to calling him that anyhow. Here's a guy that wowed me at the combine. Here's a guy that's about 6'1", 6'2", blazed the combine with a sub 540. Unofficially, turns out it was a 4.51 40, which is still a great time for an outside linebacker. And so I looked at his body type and I'm like, man, this guy is solidly built. I mean, he just looked well constructed. And then I find out later that he tossed up 2 1/4, 20-something, high 20s, low 30s, somewhere in there. So the guy is strong, he's physical, and he moves really well. And then you put on the tape. So obviously, I'm impressed at the combine. Now I need to do tape work. Now I need to see this guy on tape and see if the speed and all the measurables that I saw at the combine, if they actually translate to the football field. So I put on the tape. In the first game I watched, North Carolina, him against Ebron and company. And yes, he's fast. That's a given. He's fast. It translates. You see it. He moves well. He's a guy that you can put into coverage, which is what I think the Seahawks have envisioned for him. I could even see this guy moving to safety, to be honest, because when he blitzes, to me, he doesn't hit home enough. And it's because he didn't have a lot of creativity when he blitzes. He's one of these straight line blitzers. I run fast in one direction and hope I beat the guy that I'm blitzing against. I hope they don't even know I'm coming, so I get a free run at the quarterback. But if they know I'm coming and they're ready to protect, I just hope I beat them with pure speed. And in the NFL, that's not generally the case. Unless you have a breakdown in protection, normally you don't just get in scot-free, straight line, direct path to the quarterback. You've got to be able to, go one way and change direction because, again, these big guys, these 315-pound linemen, you get them going in one direction and then quickly change direction. It's hard for them to adjust. So if he can find a way to go one way, then move to the other way, he'll get into the backfield and have a chance to get to the quarterback more often. If he can learn how to spin off of a tackle or a guard, he'll get to the quarterback a little bit more often. But he's a guy that sometimes is stout at the point of attack, but again, he's a lighter outside linebacker at about 230, 35 pounds or so. He's not a guy that's huge. Again, he's solidly built, though, for his size. And he's a guy that can get washed in the run game. I think that where his value is as a pass defender, running with these athletic tight ends, as well as trying to get to the quarterback. But again, I feel like he's got the ability to make a switch to safety if the Seahawks saw fit. Now, I still think the Seahawks envision him as an outside, weak side linebacker, a guy that can run with some of these tight ends and help you negate a guy like Vernon Davis. Help you negate the tight ends in your division. Jared Cook Jr. in St. Louis. So I think they look at him as a guy that can run with these tight ends, keep tabs on these tight ends, and can drop into zone coverage, can run sideline to sideline. He's going to be an excellent special teamer, can cover punts, can be a gunner if need be. He's got the speed to do it. So I think they see value in him not only as a defender but as a special team standout. So he's a guy that's going to help this team right away. I'm not that enamored with him in the run game. I'm not that enamored with him as a cover linebacker. I think he does a lot of things well. He does nothing great. But I think his one attribute, which is speed, is going to keep him around on this roster and give him an opportunity to compete for some playing time down the line. And so in the 4th round, 132nd pick overall, linebacker out of Boston College, KPL, Kevin Pierre-Louis, or Kevin Pierre-Louis, to me is a solid double. Wasn't blown away by Kevin Pierre-Louis when I turned on the tape. I did see the speed. I saw the athletic ability. He runs to the football. He hustles. He'll give you everything he's got. And so I think he's a guy that is made for special teams. And if they can teach him the finer points of the game and his position, and he's able to adjust, and he's a smart guy, I think then he could actually get on the field and help you in some capacity, whatever that may be. Maybe it's in pass coverage and nickel and dime situations on 3rd and long where he can get on the field and cover the other team's tight end. Or maybe it's in the base defense where teams want to go 2 wide with a tight end, split them out, and he's able to cover the slot. Or even in 3 wide situation where he's able to come out and cover over that slot receiver. So we'll see what value he brings to the table in Seattle. You look at the 5th round selection of this Seattle Seahawks team, 172nd overall, defensive tackle out of Middle Tennessee State, Jimmy Staten. And honestly, don't like this pick. Okay, I'll put the tape on. And again, this is one of those, hey, if John and Pete make the selection, then this guy must be legit. So I turn on the tape expecting to see a guy balling out of his mind, balling out of his brain. And I turn on the tape, and it's just a guy. And he's just standing there, and he's not getting any pressure. And he's not getting to the quarterback. He's not getting to the ball carrier. Now, he stopped at the point of attack. They weren't moving him out of the way. But, hey, anybody can do that. Okay? I just bagged on the Eagles for selecting Bo Allen, a defensive tackle / nose tackle out of Wisconsin that does nothing, doesn't move well. He just stands there and eats up space. You can't do that in this league anymore. They don't do that. They don't have a position for guys like that anymore. That position died about 7 years ago when Kevin and Pat Williams, the Williams boys, were holding it down in Minnesota. I think that was the last of a dying breed with Pat Williams out there in Minnesota. You can't get away with that anymore, having guys just stand there and take up space. Those Ted Washington, Pat Williams, Gilbert Brown type guys, Tony Saragusa, you don't get away with that anymore. Space eaters aren't in vogue anymore. Now, every one of those guys that I just named, with the exception of Ted Washington, could move. All right? They had movement skills. Jimmy Staten has moving skills. He has movement skills. He can move, but he didn't do anything. Literally, when I watched the tape, I was disappointed because he got blocked on every single play. There was minimal extra effort to get off of blocks and shed them and get into the ball carrier and get into the play. He did beat the guard that he was going against one time and made a tackle for loss. But that was it. That was the only flash of, hey, I deserve to be drafted that I saw. I didn't see anything that saw this guy potentially be a 5th round pick, let alone get drafted, period. So to see him get drafted in the 5th round, obviously, I was watching the wrong tape. Again, I am going to give John Snyder and Pete Carroll the benefit of the doubt every step of the way, because when you draft 6th and 7th rounders and you get undrafted rookie free agents to come in and ball out for you consistently, you're doing something right. And when you hit in the 1st and 2nd rounds and these guys come in and they play ball for you, and you get a 3rd round quarterback like Russell Wilson and he turns out to be a gem, and you just win at the draft consistently, then you get the benefit of the doubt from me. So I'm going to give you the benefit of the doubt here. Now, I'm not giving your pick the benefit of the doubt. I am giving you the benefit of the doubt and saying that this guy's going to fit your system, and you see something, and I was watching the wrong tape. But I didn't see anything that makes me feel good about this guy. I don't think that he was a 5th round selection. I don't think he's a guy that's going to have an impact on this roster. In the 5th round, 172nd pick overall, defensive tackle out of Middle Tennessee State. Jimmy Staten, for me, is a single. I didn't see anything here that makes me say, wow, you got something here. He's not an eyebrow raiser. He's not a guy that's making me take a second look. That's one of those, hey, how about that picks? Hey, how about that? Oh, okay. Nice. You move on to the 6th round, 199th overall selection, offensive tackle out of Marshall, Garrett Scott. And you see this big red cross here, which means he was a casualty of not being able to pass the physical of the Seattle Seahawks. Somehow, this guy made it through the whole entire process being evaluated. Don't know if this guy was at the combine. I seriously doubt it, because if so, they would have picked this guy apart and found his rare medical condition with his heart, and he would not have been able to participate, and subsequently he probably would have been taken off of every single team's board in the National Football League. So obviously he wasn't at the combine, probably performed at his own pro day at Marshall, because they didn't detect his heart condition at Marshall, or else he probably wouldn't have been playing college football. So he works out, everything checks out, he gets to Seattle, they sign him up, then they realize, hey, this guy has a heart condition, he can't play football. And you might say to yourself, well, hey, he's played football this whole time, nothing's happened, why can't he continue to play? That's like me saying, hey, you've robbed a lot of banks and you haven't got caught, why don't you keep robbing banks? Eventually, something could and probably will happen. So you just need to stop now while you still can. And so nobody wants to see a guy pass out and die on the field. That would be catastrophic on so many different levels. And so the Seahawks had to allow this guy to be released. But in typical first-rate fashion, Seahawks gave this guy, because he had already signed with them, his signing bonus. They gave him his bonus and allowed him to walk away with a paycheck in hand, which is great on the part of the Seahawks, because you feel bad for Garrett Scott, Here's a guy that has worked his entire life to get to this point. He has finally seen his dream fulfilled. He gets drafted. Here's his name called in the final day of the draft, and he feels like he's made it, only to be told, no, you can't play because your body has failed you. It really sickens me to hear something like this, but that's the way the cookie crumbles sometimes. That's life. And so Seahawks gave him a parting gift on his way out of the door, and that's classic Seattle Seahawks, a first-rate franchise handling a situation like this in a first-class manner. But he is no longer on this football team. So we move on to the next pick, 208th overall in the 6th round, safety out of San Diego State, Eric Pinkins. This is a guy that a lot of Seattle Seahawks fans are excited about. I had one guy send me a message telling me, oh, we got this guy out of San Diego State. We're the best. He's 6'3", runs a 4.4 40, yada, yada, yada. I said, okay, great. When I watch the tape on him, I'll be the judge. That's great. And so put the tape on, and he's a big guy. I mean, 6'3". There's no denying the size. You look at him, and you're like, man, this guy is huge. He's 6'3", and when you hear that he runs a sub 4.5 40 and it's a 4.44 40, 4.44, you go, okay, whoa. And then so next thing is you want to see, does that translate? Because again, you know, I talk about Lonnie Ballantyne all the time, and he's my poster child for this. 6'3", 215-pound safety out of Memphis that was drafted in the 7th round by the Houston Texans. And he's a 4.39 40 type of guy. Yet you turn on the tape and you don't see 4.39 40 speed. So again, sometimes those numbers can be misleading because guys don't play at their timed speed. It happens all the time. So my next question was, does this guy play at his timed speed? The answer to that is yes, he does play at his time speed. Now, this is the question you have to ask yourself, because he had high production numbers in tackles. He plays close to the line of scrimmage. When he's asked to play back as a safety, he's slow to recognize what's going on. He's easily beaten over the top. He struggled. I watched a game, I'm trying to recollect. It was against Brandon Cooks in Oregon State. The guy was torched. Okay, Brandon Cooks was going over the top repeatedly against that defense. Had close to, if not over 200 yards receiving in that game. And those guys were getting lit up. And Eric Pinkins was supposed to be back covering that half of the field, and he was getting smoked. So he's late to the football as a safety. Now, this is the question I have. And I easily could see this happening. I see the Seahawks converting this guy to corner. And when you watch the tape, he's at corner over the slot quite a bit. And I think that's what the Seahawks saw in him. And they saw that capability and they said, hey, why can't we convert this guy to a full-time corner? Forget about him being a safety and dropping down over the slot. Why can't we just make this guy a corner, period? And I don't think he has the movement skills to be a guy that you put on the outside, on an island, and you just can feel good about him locking down the other team's receiver in front of him. I don't think he has that type of athleticism and agility. He had some pretty shoddy numbers in the short shuttle and the 3-cone drill, so that lets you know that the agility isn't what you would like it to be. I think he has trouble, and this happens with most big guys. That's why Richard Sherman and some of these other big corners are so impressive, because they're fluid athletes. You know, they don't have trouble sinking the hips, turning and running, and getting out of that stance, that back pedal, flipping the hips, and turning and going. They don't have a problem sticking their foot in the ground, transitioning, and making a break on the football. And so most big guys, Sean Smith, and these 6'3" corners, these 6'2" guys, most of them have trouble sinking the hips, turning and flipping, transitioning from back pedal to full-out sprint. They have a problem sticking their foot in the ground, transitioning their weight, and moving and making a break on the football. And he strikes me as one of those guys that has a problem sticking his foot in the ground. And I saw tight ends run by this guy, and not like vertically, but I'm talking about I saw a tight end stick his foot in the ground, act as if he was running an out, only to run over the middle of the field, and he was wide open. Pinkins was about 2 steps behind him because he had a problem reacting and adjusting to the fake out and redirecting his weight and turning around and sprinting to the football. So to me, he's a work in progress. But again, he's not a guy that you're going to ask to come in and start right away. He's not a guy that you're looking for production out of right now. You get this guy in camp. He's a physical specimen. He's a height, weight, speed freak. So you take him. You allow him to learn how to play the cornerback position if, in fact, you are going to convert him to corner, which I think is the best thing to do because I don't think he's a natural fit at safety either. And so don't waste the height back there at safety if he's not going to be able to be on time and make a play on the football. Convert this guy to a corner, and I think that's what the Seahawks see. He's got the speed to do it. He's just got to be faster with everything that he does. And they'll find out if he can do it or not. If he can't do it, fine. He's a 6th-round pick. You took a flyer on him, and then you move on. If he can, you've got yourself another physical specimen at the cornerback position on your hands. There's no more Brandon Browner out there in Seattle. He's moving on to New England. And so you could use another big physical corner out there. This could be the answer to some of the questions you may have at the cornerback position because I know you got stuff out there, and your young man went out there and he balled out of control last year at that second cornerback spot. I was really impressed with him coming in, being thrusted into that spotlight after Browner went down and had the suspension and this, that, and the other. And he came in and played wonderful. You still got Tyrone Simon, so you might feel good about him because you lost your slot guy, and he's now in New York. So there's going to be some change, some turnover at that cornerback position for the Seahawks this year. This is a guy that down the road in a year or two, maybe you could call on him. He could step in, and he could be another one of these big physical corners that allows you to continue on with this chain of big, long physical corners that get it done in Seattle. So in the 6th round, 208th overall selection, safety out of San Diego State, Eric Pinkins for me, he's a double. I mean, there's a lot to like here, but he's raw. He's got a lot to learn. He's got to get better at his craft. But the height, weight, speed is something that you cannot discount. And you either have it or you don't. You either wake up in the morning and you can run fast or you can't. This guy can run really fast, and he's really tall, and he's really well put together. Now he's got to show the athleticism and agility to be able to move, get in and out of breaks, be able to transition, turn his hips, run, and show the ability to just play the cornerback position. If that's what you're going to do. If you're going to keep him as a safety, then he's got to learn how to play the safety position. And he's got 2 guys in front of him, in Cam Chancellor and Earl Thomas, that do it the best in this league. So he's got great guys to learn from if he's going to continue to play the safety position. But I see this guy being a corner. That's just my opinion, and I feel like that's what Seattle has envisioned for him as well, making that transition to a cornerback full time. So you move on to the 7th round, final pick in the draft, 227th overall, running back out of Arkansas, Kiro Small. And so what I'm going to do here is a 2-for-1 special. I'm going to mark out safety for Eric Pinkins. He is going to be a cornerback in my mind. And I'm going to mark out running back for Kiro Small and put in fullback because that is a more natural fit for him. And that's what he basically played at Arkansas. Here's a guy. First of all, there's nothing small about Kiro Small. Remember that. He's a big bowling ball, fire hydrant type of guy. To me, his comp in this league is a guy that I have affectionately dubbed bowling ball in Carolina and Mike Tolbert. To me, same exact stature, except he lacks the pop that Mike Tolbert possesses. Mike Tolbert is an explosive athlete for his size. Kiro Small is not. He has short area quickness. He's not an explosive athlete. In the run game, when he blocks, he doesn't blow guys up. He's not an explosive blocker. He didn't go and pop guys and move them out of the way. He's a contact blocker, which means he gets contact, he makes contact with a guy, gets in the way, and he does his job. He's not going to move a guy out of a hole necessarily 2 yards and blow him up, pancake him, none of that stuff. That's not what he's about. He's a contact blocker. He goes, he seeks out contact, he finds it, and he gets in the way. And so that's the type of blocker he is. He can also catch the football out of the backfield. I think he's got some really good hands. I saw one catch, had to extend away from the frame, extend, caught the football, brought it in, made a play up the field. Solid play. he can catch the football. So that's another check. And then, last but not least, he can run the football. Again, limited mobility in terms of movement skills, not going to make anybody miss, not going to run anybody over per se. But the ability to run the football, lower the shoulder, lean forward, get that extra yard is absolutely there. He's a guy that in short yardage, if you feel the need to, you can hand it to him 3rd and 1 and have him plow forward and pick up a first down. Again, he's got a forward lean to his running style when he's running the football. He always falls forward. So, again, if you want to hand him the football, 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, he'll be a guy that can pick up some yards for you. So, to me, he does all of the small things really well. He's a guy that could fit in this system. You let go of Michael Robinson at one time, then you brought him back toward the end of the season, which I thought was only right. No need in winning the Super Bowl without a guy like Michael Robinson on the roster who had been there for a while. But I think you guys have seen that the time is up with Michael Robinson. That's why he didn't make the roster. You have a lot of depth at that running back position. I've even heard this year that you're planning on having a running back by committee because you're so talented at the running back position. Everybody knows the Seahawks have among the most talented trio of backs in the league. Now you're trying to show the rest of the league that you have it, because in your circles you believe in beast mode and Christine Michael and Robert Turbin. And now you want to show the rest of the league what you have, and I think that's very smart. So this is a guy that could block for them, and I could see him making this roster. I could see him not making this roster. It all depends on what he comes in and does. I think he's also can add a little bit of a special teams value as well. So I think that's how he's going to make this roster. Ultimately, it's not going to be because of what he does in the run game, blocking, catching the football, being able to run. It's not because of his versatility on the offensive side of football. It's going to be the versatility on the offensive side of the football combined with his ability to play special teams. If he can do both of those things, he'll end up on this roster. If he can't do both, if he can only do one or the other adequately, then he won't be on this team. In the 7th round, 227th overall selection, fullback out of Arkansas, Kiro Small for me, is a double. I like the pick. I don't think he's a bad fit for what you do in Seattle. I think he'll fit in fine. I think he'd be a guy that you would fall in love with, and I could see him having some kind of nickname in Seattle, and every time he touches the football, you know how we do with fullbacks, like they do in Green Bay with John Coon. I can see you doing something that, like Small or something like that. It's whack, I know, but I can see that because he's such a big guy. He's a bowling ball guy, and it's funny because his name is almost contradictory. You know, it's almost one of those ironic nicknames, like a guy that's named Tiny. Like, you remember the guy that played Zeus and the guy that plays Debo in the Friday movies? His nickname is Tiny. There's nothing tiny about that guy, you know, so... But that's one of those nicknames you get when you were 7, when you were a small guy. You end up being 6'4", and all the people that knew you when you were 7 still call you Tiny, and you can't shake the nickname. I could easily see him just having that, and him just being small. Even though his name is Small, he's not small. He's big. It's up. That's the Seattle Seahawks draft in a nutshell. Paul Richardson in the 2nd round takes the top off the defense. Elite speed, can run by any corner in this league with a free release. He's a triple, gives the Seahawks an element that they lacked last season without Percival Harvin in the lineup. Justin Britt, your second rounder. I don't totally agree with this pick, but again, in JP, I trust, okay? And so if they say that's the pick in the 2nd round, then that's the pick in the 2nd round. John and Pete know how to get it done. And JP, I trust. So, okay. You say he's a 2nd rounder. He's a 2nd rounder. He's a double for me. Cassius Marsh. If this guy can figure out what he is, if you can figure out what he is, get him to pick a weight, stay at that weight, I think you got yourself a football player. He's a double because I don't know what you're going to do with him. He doesn't know what he's going to do with himself. If he can find a weight, stay at that weight, play at that weight, and be consistent, and get rid of the foolish penalties and stay out of trouble off the field as well as on it, you got yourself possibly a triple down the road, but right now he's a double. Kevin Norwood, the consummate professional, going to fit right in with the rest of this receiving corps. Nothing flashy, nothing highly explosive. He's not C4, but he'll do all of the dirty work. He'll catch the football. He'll block. He'll be a really good piece on this football team. He's a double. Kevin Pierre Louie, a.k.a. Kevin Pierre Lewis, KPL. He's a double. A sideline, outside linebacker that can cover tight ends, can blitz. I'd like to see him be more consistent in everything that he does. Blitzing, covering linebackers, zone coverage, blitzing after the quarterback, helping in the run game. I'd like to see him be more consistent. To me, right now, he's only a third down linebacker. I don't think he's a guy you necessarily want on the field on first and second down. But again, he had high tackle production at Boston College. So that may be contrary to what I'm telling you, but I'm just telling you from what I saw, he's a guy that you don't necessarily want on the field on first and second down. You move on to the 5th round. Jimmy Staten, defensive tackle out of Middle Tennessee State, only single in this draft. I just didn't like what I saw. Honestly, he didn't do anything for me. He wasn't explosive like Red Bryant off the snap. He didn't do anything that reminded me of a player that you already have on your roster so I could say, all right, this is the role that he will play on this team. He just was standing there, okay? I have a problem with the guy that's strong at the point of attack but doesn't make any tackles, okay? So you do with that one what you will. Again, that's a J&P special. If JP say that that's a 5th round selection, then he's a 5th round selection. I just didn't see it. He's a single. Garrett Scott, offensive tackle out of Marshall, was drafted, has a rare heart ailment, cannot play in this league, was let go by the Seahawks, given an injury settlement on the way out, so that was nice of the Seahawks to do. He is no longer a part of this football team. You look at Eric Pinkins, safety out of San Diego State. I've dubbed him a corner. I think that's going to be a more natural fit for him. I think that's what the Seahawks are going to try to do with him. He is a double height, weight, speed specimen. 4'4", 40, 6'3" height, about 215, 220 pounds. He's a big fella. He can move. The question is the agility. Can he flip the hips? Can he turn and run? Can he plant his feet in the ground and go much faster than slow? That is to be continued. He's a double. Kiro, small fullback out of Arkansas. Can catch it, can run it, can block. Not a powerful blocker. He is a contact blocker, will get in the way, but isn't going to blow anybody off of a spot. He's going to have to make this team off of special teams and the ability to be versatile as an offensive player as well. And he is a double to round out this draft. So let's tally it up. I'm going to take Garrett Scott out of this draft. So there's 8 selections in all. Triple, double, double, that's 7. 9 for another double, 11, 12, 14, 16. So 16, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So 8. Let's see if you got any bonuses. Of course, you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 doubles. So that's a 2 double bonus. So you stopped with 16. You add 4 to that for the 2 double bonuses. That's 20. You divide 20 by 8. It's a solid double, 2.4 double for the Seattle Seahawks in the 2014 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series. This is what the Seahawks do, okay? Some of these doubles might end up turning into triples and home runs. That's what they do. JP, they normally get it done. So some of these guys, like Cassius Marsh, if he turns out to be a 275-pound stud, like I think he could be, that could easily be a triple or a home run. Justin Britt, I'm not sold on him as a second-round tackle. I don't like where you took him in this draft. That doesn't mean he can't come in and be a stalwart at right tackle for you moving forward. He could easily turn into a triple or a home run. Again, Eric Pinkins in 3 years could be another one of these huge corners that you have being physical, that's a mammoth out there, height, weight, speed specimen. In 2 years, we could be talking about this guy being the next big thing at the cornerback position for the Seattle Seahawks. That's what the Seahawks do. They get guys in there. You don't necessarily agree with it. In 2 years, we're praising them for doing it again. And so we'll see if this is one of those drafts. Right now, it's a solid double, 2.4 for the Seattle Seahawks. If it happens in the National Football League, whether big or small, we cover it all here in the Lab Room. I thank you for joining me. You know what this is. Who's next?
Draft Zone.
Like the content? Want more? Sub up.